January 2nd, 1852. Inside a British naval ship anchored off the coast of West Africa, Commodore Henry Bruce is writing a classified dispatch to London. His hands are shaking. This was not the confident voice of an empire at its peak. It was the voice of a commander who had just discovered something Britain wasn't prepared to admit to the world.
Resistance beyond expectations. Lagos not compliant. Situation unstable. King Kosoko must be removed at all costs.
But here's what they never told you in the history books. The man Britain feared, the king who refused their treaties, the ruler who stood between the British Empire and total control of West Africa, was not some obscure local chief. He was King Kosoko, the last Lagosian monarch to challenge Britain head-on. And this is the story the British tried to bury beneath treaties and carefully edited colonial narratives. To understand why Britain wanted Kosoko gone, why they were willing to bombard an entire city, overthrow a dynasty, and rewrite the history of Lagos, we need to go back. Back before the gunboats, before the treaties, before the word colony ever appeared on a British map. Back to a kingdom Britain desperately wanted to control, but could never fully understand. The year is 1830. While Europe celebrates its industrial revolution and Britain expands across continents, there is a city on the West African coast whose power defies everything London expected. Lagos! Not the Legos you know today. A lagoon fortress, a commercial hub linking the entire Bight of Benin. A multi-ethnic port ruled by Yoruba kings, influenced by Benin, and connected to Afro-Brazilian merchants returning from the Americas. By the 1840s, Lagos controlled trade routes stretching deep into Yoruba land. Whoever ruled Lagos controlled wealth, influence, and regional power. And standing at the center of this world was Kosoko, prince of the royal house of Ologun Kutera. Ambitious, strategic, and respected by warriors across the region. But Kosoko's story begins not with triumph, but betrayal. Lagos politics were brutal long before the British arrived. Succession in Lagos wasn't simply about who was the eldest or most qualified. It was about alliances with chiefs, warriors, spiritual leaders, and powerful trade families. And in 1845, the struggle for the throne turned violent. Kosoko's uncle, Oba Osinlokan, had seized power years earlier through force. When Osinlokan died, his son Adewu Ojulari became king, but he was despised. The chiefs forced him to commit suicide. Lagos was thrown into chaos. The throne became a battlefield. Kosoko, with massive support from war chiefs and Brazilian returnee merchants, was the favorite. But there was one man who stood in his way. Akitoye, his uncle, older, cautious, and determined to rule. What followed was one of the most dramatic power struggles in Lagos history. Akitoye clinched the throne in 1841, but his position was fragile. Kosoko was too popular, too connected,
Too powerful.
so Akitoye tried to eliminate him. The attempt failed. Kosoko fled the city, but he did not disappear. He regrouped. He built alliances. He gathered a loyal army. And in 1845, he returned. His forces stormed Lagos in a ferocious battle known as Ogun Olomiro, the Saltwater War. Akitoye fled. Kosoko became king. This was the beginning of Britain's problem. To London, Lagos was more than a city. It was the gateway to West Africa. And Britain wanted one thing: control of the Atlantic coast to enforce its anti-slave trade policy, or at least that was the official story. But the truth was darker and far more strategic. Internal British documents reveal the real motives: control trade, break West African coastal alliances, secure influence over Yoruba hinterlands, establish a military presence, outmaneuver rivals like France and Portugal. Kosoko was a problem because he refused to sign British treaties. He refused British missionaries. He refused to surrender Lagosian independence. They described him in secret reports as hostile to British interests. Translation: he wouldn't let Britain control the port. Kosoko remained aligned with Afro-Brazilian merchants and maintained a foreign policy that didn't bend to London. Britain needed someone more cooperative, someone like Ahoyaya, and so the empire made a decision that would reshape Nigerian history. Kosoko must be removed, at any cost. 1849. The British West Africa Squadron arrives off the Lagos coast. London claimed they were coming to end the slave trade. But their real plan was political intervention, carefully disguised as humanitarianism. Ahoyaya, exiled in Abeokuta, sensed opportunity. He wrote desperate letters to the British.
Restore me to my rightful throne, and I will sign whatever treaty you desire.
This was exactly what Britain wanted. The moment Ahoyaya promised cooperation, the British strategy solidified. British officers wrote,
Kosoko cannot be reasoned with. Ahoyaya is favorable to British interests.
And so the plan was set. Ahoyaya would return. The British would help him. Lagos would fall. December 1851, British warships, the HMS Bloodhound and HMS Teaser, positioned themselves at the Lagos Lagoon. They demanded Kosoko surrender. He refused. The British opened fire. For 3 straight days, they bombarded Lagos with naval artillery. This was the first major British military intervention on Nigerian soil. Kosoko's forces responded with ferocity Britain did not expect. War songs filled the air. Warriors fortified the beaches. Gunners fired from hidden positions across the lagoon. The British expected an easy victory. They were wrong. Kosoko's defenders inflicted severe damage. The British suffered heavy casualties. The resistance was so intense that officers recorded,
Unexpected strength, serious obstruction to British aims. Lagos must be subdued completely.
On December 26, the British launched their full assault, a brutal marine invasion known as the Bombardment of Lagos. Buildings burned. Civilians fled. The lagoon turned red. But Kosoko refused to surrender. His warriors fought street by street, house by house, refusing to let Britain turn Lagos into another colonial outpost. After a week of fierce fighting, Kosoko realized the city could not survive continued bombardment. He retreated, not in defeat but to preserve his people. Ahoyaya was installed as king. The British declared victory. But the war was not over. Not even close. Kosoko fled to Epe with hundreds of loyal followers, and there he established a rival kingdom, fully armed, highly organized, and still determined to reclaim Lagos. British reports called him
a persistent threat, a danger to commerce, a king who will not accept displacement.
Kosoko forged alliances with Awari towns. He rebuilt his forces. He disrupted British trade routes. London panicked. If Kosoko returned, all their plans for regional control, trade, influence, political dominance would collapse. So Britain rewrote the narrative. Kosoko was described as a tyrant. Officials portrayed him as a villain. Ahoyaya was painted as a peaceful king who invited British protection. But secret correspondence tells a different story.
Kosoko commands loyalty. Lagosians prefer him. His influence growing, must neutralize him permanently.
The British used treaties, pressure, and regional alliances to isolate him. And yet he endured. Kosoko remained powerful enough that Britain eventually negotiated with him directly. By 1854, he secured a treaty guaranteeing his safety and authority in Epe. He had survived the full weight of the British Empire. When Lagos officially became a British colony in 1861, textbooks and colonial reports framed it as a peaceful cession, a voluntary signing, a humanitarian effort. But the internal British documents tell another story. Gunboat intimidation, economic blockades, deposition of local rulers, manipulation of internal politics, strategic suppression of Kosoko's legacy. Kosoko was not a footnote. He was the central obstacle to British control of Nigeria's most important port. So Britain erased him from the narrative. They painted Akitoye and later Dosunmu as uncontested rulers. They reduced the Lagos War to a minor skirmish. But the reality stands. Kosoko was the last independent king of Lagos, the last monarch to face Britain as an equal, the last ruler whose authority was not shaped by colonial interests. And his resistance forced Britain to spend years, money, and military resources they never wanted to admit publicly. Kosoko lost the city, but he won something far more important. He proved that Lagos did not fall easily. It was taken through force, politics, and imperial ambition. Kosoko eventually reconciled with Lagos under British rule. He received the title Oloja of Eriko and remained influential until his death in 1872. But his true legacy lived elsewhere, in the memory of Lagosians who knew the truth, in the families who passed down stories of resistance, in the monuments that honored the warriors who defended the city, in the deep pride of a people who refused to surrender their autonomy. Today, most of the world knows nothing about the Lagos War, nothing about the bombardment, nothing about Kosoko's defiance. But now you do, because history is not always written by the victors. Not really. History is written by those who survive, those who remember, and those who refuse to let their stories disappear. Kosoko may have lost his throne, but he won immortality. His resistance forced Britain to reveal its motives. His defiance shattered the myth of easy conquest. His legacy lives in every Lagosian who still carries the pride of a city that refused to bow. This is not just the story of a king. It is the story of Lagos, a city that fought, a kingdom that resisted, a people who refused to vanish. And now, the world knows. This is the Lagos War. This is King Kosoko versus Britain. And this is the history they tried to bury. And here on Echoes of the Ancients, we bring these buried histories back to life. If you believe stories like these deserve to be heard, don't just watch, join us. Hit subscribe, share this film, and help us amplify the voices history tried to silence. Because the past is not dead. Its echoes are still calling.